Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I welcome you to week 8 of our course for the BBA program titled Advertising and Promotional Strategies. During this week, I'll be discussing the topic, as you can see in front of you on your screen, for week 8 as per your course outline. This is going to be copywriting, the language of advertising, whereby we will focus on print, radio, television, and digital copywriting. Copywriting is one of the fundamental aspects of creating an advertising campaign or creating an ad. Please note that this discussion on copywriting directly connects with our week 6 and week 7 discussion regarding creative advertising. As you might recall, during week 6, we covered creative advertising in terms of the concepts of creativity, especially the principle of creativity, creative idea, and creative leap. We also looked at a number of examples as to how creativity is demonstrated through any ad. For week 7, I gave you an individual exercise with the aim that you are going to demonstrate your understanding of creativity, the principle of creativity, uh, by generating a creative idea for any ad as per the requirements of the exercise which has been given to you. And this exercise is going to be submitted through the Google Classroom. Now, let me take you to the presentation for this week, and I will accordingly explain as to what we are going to be uh, covering during this session. Uh, as you can see, this is week 8, copywriting the language of advertising. The objectives of the session, we're going to have a quick recap for week 6 and 7 so that we can connect what we are discussing during this week with regards to copywriting with what we have covered so far during week 6 and 7. This is important in terms of ensuring that there is continuity and flow so that you are in a better position to understand how some of these topics as per your course outline are interconnected. Next, we will shift our attention towards copywriting, and we will try to understand copywriting. There will be a review of some of the key points from chapter 9, uh, titled Copywriting. This is from your course book. So I will be showing some pages or relevant sections of this chapter from your course book and reviewing that during this lecture as well. And finally, there will be some review of examples of copywriting from local or Pakistani advertisements or ads to help you understand better as to what we are talking about or what I'm trying to help you understand with regards to copywriting. So first, a quick recap before I proceed with the more technical aspects or details of copywriting. Uh, Now, please remember that this topic that we are discussing, that is copywriting, is a part of our bigger or major discussion connecting with week 6 and 7, which is creating an ad campaign or creating an advertisement. Now, when we talk about creating an ad campaign or any ad, there are 3 major steps involved, as you can see. The first one is the development of creative idea or concept. And obviously, this is something we have covered, and I covered that during week 6 lecture. And for week 7, you are required to perform an individual exercise connected with this topic. So any advertising agency or any ad maker, ad producing agency which is providing services to any client or sponsor organizations regarding an ad campaign for their brand or product. They're going to create this ad campaign in terms of three broader steps. The first one we have covered, which is they are required to develop the creative idea or the concept. Second step is copywriting, which is our topic for week 8, as you can see in front of you. And for week 9, we'll be covering the third step, which is ad design and production. So please remember that all these three steps go in a sequence. Uh, First, the creative idea is finalized, followed by copywriting, which is supposed to be taken care of. You might recall that when we discussed the structure of an advertising agency during week 2 of our semester, uh, I told you that one of the key positions within an advertising agency is the copywriters, or it can be a group of copywriters. And they are working under the supervision of the creative director, who is head of the ad campaign project or producer of the ad. So this is an important position and remains an essential part of creating an ad campaign. Now, as I mentioned at the start of my talk, there are four major formats of copywriting, and we are going to be discussing these during this session. The first one is print copy, the second is radio, the third is television, and the fourth one is digital. And again, you might remember that these four connect with the four formats of media that we have also covered during our initial discussions inside the classroom at IM Sciences, where I discussed with you four major formats or types of media, that is print, radio, television, and digital or online. So in that same continuity, these are the four formats of copyright. Obviously, for further discussion, you are required to read chapter 9. Now, it is also important for me to explain or help you understand the major task for week 8 that you're supposed to perform with regards to the topic of copywriting. Uh, the first one is obviously you're supposed to watch this online lecture on copywriting that I'm delivering right now. The second is you are required to read chapter 9 copywriting from your course book. A copy of this course book has already been shared with you through the CR. The book is titled Advertising and Integrated Marketing Communication Principles and Practice by Moriarty, Mitchell and Wells. Uh, Next task that the students are required to perform is they're supposed to understand various aspects of copywriting from the examples of local or Pakistani ads that I'm going to be sharing with you during this lecture that I'm delivering right now. And finally, you're supposed to take notes related to copywriting while you watch this online lecture or when you are reading or reviewing chapter 9 of the course book. Now, please remember that in order to derive true benefit from this discussion that I'm having with you, you must ensure that you do not only watch this lecture or video session, but you also read the chapter 9, especially those uh, components or sections of the chapter which I am going to be showing you during my talk to help you understand the relevant aspects of copywriting. Uh, I will also be discussing some examples with you. Uh, so those examples will be shown to you as we proceed. Now, I'm going to now move to chapter 9 of the book titled Copywriting. And for most part of my remaining talk, I'll be reviewing key points within this chapter to help you understand what is copywriting, what are some of the technical or important dimensions of copywriting to understand, without which an ad campaign cannot be created. Now, do remember that by the time any advertising agency or members of the ad campaign who are responsible for producing an ad campaign for a client The moment they begin copywriting, they already have the creative idea or creative concept developed and approved by the client. Again, this connects with our week 6 and week 7 topic. So you must remember that copywriting only begins once the creative idea or creative concept has been developed and approved. So with that assumption that the creative idea has been developed and approved, now we begin the second step of how ads are created, which is copywriting. Now I'm going to be showing some uh, key parts of this chapter to help you understand and facilitate you with the reading of this chapter later on once my video lecture is over. This chapter starts from page 258 of your course book. Please make sure that you note that down so that it is easy for you to locate this chapter within the course book. Uh, Obviously, I'm not going to cover each and every aspect of this chapter. So to save time and to um, make this session more efficient, I'll only focus on the important aspects of this chapter, which are highlighted as I'll show it to you. So for you guys, you will be reading this chapter, especially starting from page 260, 260, with the heading, What is the Language of Copywriting? As you can see in front of you right here. Now, on page 261, there's an important um, aspect of uh, the importance of copywriting as to what it means and why it is important. Uh, Before I explain what copywriting is in terms of its basic definition, I'm going to simply show you four types of advertisements whereby copywriting is specifically or specially important. The first one is ads or advertisements which are complex in nature, as you can see on your screen. And again, this is discussed on page 261 of the course book. So if a message is complicated, particularly if it is making an argument, words can be more specific than visuals. So the importance of copywriting, whereby you rely on words, becomes important if you are trying to deliver a complex message, a message which might be difficult to understand, especially from a common man's perspective. Let me give you a very recent example of the COVID-19 scenario. Any government organization, any non-profit organization, any business organization which is trying to create awareness regarding um, coronavirus, for example, if the World Health Organization is developing an ad campaign regarding what SOPs or what protocols to follow to protect yourself from this disease, uh, please remember that the disease itself is uh, complex in the sense that from a layman's perspective, a common man might not be able to understand some of the very complex terminologies related to the field of medicine, for example, how a virus works, how it affects your body, how you can protect yourself. There might be some very technical terms which might be familiar to a doctor or any person from the field of medicine. But from a common man's perspective, you have to choose words in such a way that they are easy to understand, and a common man can very well understand how he or she can protect themselves from the potential of catching this virus. So here, what the point I'm trying to make is that for any such complex message, words are very important, and it becomes very important that the copywriter develops a copy in such a manner where it is easily understandable. Second type of advertisements where copywriting might play an important role is high involvement advertisements. In marketing, we have this theory called involvement theory, whereby it is based on the premise that products can be divided into different categories or groups, especially two broader categories or groups based on the level of involvement of a consumer or customer regarding their purchase and consumption. Now, for example, if a product is expensive and it is not frequently bought, along with some other characteristics, such a product will require a higher level of involvement of the buyer or the consumer in terms of purchasing and consuming it. On the other hand, if a product is cheaper, low priced, and the consumer buys this product very routinely, more often, the consumer's level of involvement in terms of purchasing the product, how much concentration is involved, how much time he gives to this process of purchase and consumption, that will be very low or very less. Let me give you two examples. One is if a person is trying to buy a house or an expensive piece of property. Uh, a house is an expensive proposition, an expensive product, and a house is not bought frequently during the lifetime of any consumer. So this is a high involvement product. This decision to purchase a house or any building or any property is a high involvement decision. So that is why the buyer or the consumer or the customer will be consulting many people. He or she will spend a lot of time trying to understand which house to buy, whether to go for the purchase decision or not. So such situation is called a high involvement situation. On the other hand, if a consumer is going to buy a pen or a ballpoint, for example, a student, this is a very low priced product compared to a house, and a student buys a pen very frequently as per the needs associated with taking lectures and taking notes. So because this is a low involvement product, the consumer or the customer or the student who goes to a canteen or a shop to buy a pen does not really spend a lot of time. This is a very quick decision. He or she buys the pen easily. Similarly, if you go to a shop to get a cold drink or any other regular product that you consume regularly, these are all very low involvement products, and you make the decision relatively quickly in terms of whether to purchase them or not and which one to purchase. Now here, getting back to our example, high involvement products, because a consumer spends a lot of time making the decision to purchase or not purchase because of the high price of the product, because of the nature of the product, because of the complexity of the product, because of the fact that the consumer is not a regular user or buyer of the product very often. So in such situations where an advertisement is trying to advertise a high involvement product, words or copywriting becomes very important because you are relying on words to help convince the consumer to make the purchase and consumption decision. And that is why it's written here that in high involvement category or products, copywriting plays a more significant role to facilitate the consumer, especially with regards to reducing dissonance. Dissonance basically means the sense of unease or reluctance on the part of the consumer regarding making a purchase decision. So, copywriting, effective copywriting can help reduce dissonance and facilitate the consumer with regards to making a high involvement product purchase decision. Third category where copywriting is important is those kinds of advertisements whereby you are supposed to explain something, especially whenever a new product is launched, which is not known in the market, which is not familiar in the market, which is a new arrival to the market. Usually it is believed that explanation will be required. Uh, the advertiser would like to share information regarding the different aspects of the product, how it works, etc. For example, when the first uh, Evo device of PTCL or any other company was launched, for example, the telecom companies like Zong, etc., So when they launched this product and it was new to the market, the initial advertisements required that the product is explained to the consumer to help them understand how it works and how effective it is and how useful it is and what are its attributes and benefits. So in such cases where explanation is required, copywriting or the use of words becomes very important. And lastly, abstract. Usually there are situations or there are products which are difficult to explain or help a consumer understand them. For example, Intel, which is a maker of the world-renowned processor for computers, they are producers of a very complex product which is hidden, which is uh, not visible to the common consumer. To most consumers, they don't even understand how it works. So, if you're trying to communicate some aspect of the quality of this product in terms of its effectiveness, in terms of its high speed or high performance, such abstract aspects of the quality of a product which is not even visible, consumer doesn't know how it works. So it becomes very important that you rely on creative and effective use of words or copywriting, and this is how you try to help the consumer understand. Similar is the case with software programs, operating systems. For example, how do we know that which Windows is better? Uh, Usually, the uh, for example, in the case of Microsoft, they rely on the use of numbers. For example, when we say Windows 8 versus Windows 10, for instance, one would assume that Windows 10 is an upgraded version. So just by creative usage of or simple usage of the words and how they use numbers, you can try to communicate to the common consumer that Windows 10 is an upgraded or better version compared to Windows 8 and so on and so forth. So abstract advertisements usually communicate uh, some aspect of products which are abstract or difficult to understand, and they try to communicate some of their abstract qualities using simple or easy to understand words. Now, who is a copywriter? He's the person who shapes and sculpts the words in marketing communication. And what is the concept of copy? Copy is the text of an ad or the words people say in a commercial. Please remember, what is a copy? Copy is all the text that you see on the screen if you're watching a television or a digital ad. These are all the words that you read if you're reading a print ad, for example, from a newspaper or outdoor billboard. Or these are the words that you hear that people are saying when you are listening to a radio ad. Similarly, if you're watching a TV or digital ad, anything that you hear that the actors or the performers or the background voice is saying, all this is called copy. And the process of writing or developing this text and these words is called copywriting. Copywriters are people with a very specific set of skills. Please remember that anyone cannot become a copywriter. You have to have very strong command over language or basic understanding of language, syntax, vocabulary, etc., etc. You need to have a very strong command over the effective usage of words, using minimum number of words to communicate a message effectively and in such a manner that the target audience or the consumer easily understands them. So copywriters are very good at in terms of their ability to know the meanings, derivations, moods, and feelings of words, and the reverberations and vibrations they create in the reader's mind. So, for example, if uh, you look at two words, for example, bad versus evil. Now, as some of you might very well agree, the word evil suggests a greater intensity compared to the word bad. Bad might be used even in lighter tone, jokingly, but when you use the term evil, usually it has greater intensity. So a copywriter would understand the psychological meaning of each and every word and how it connects with another word. So this is a very special skill, and copywriters have to have strong command over their understanding and knowledge of words. Moving on to page 262 of this book and this chapter, uh, the art and science of names. Now, please remember that through research, it has been proven that alphabets and words within any language convey a certain psychological meaning, like I stated earlier. For example, in the case of English language, research suggests or has determined that letters with a hard edge like T or K suggest effectiveness. Uh, Letters like C, L, R, P, and S are calming or relaxing, and Z means speed. We can uh, disagree with this because English is not our first language, but this is simply based on uh, a data collected from a sample of respondents regarding asking them what psychological meaning even a letter conveys to them. So this suggests to us that um, words and alphabets or letters have a deeper meaning and have an impact on our minds in terms of how we derive meaning out of them. So copywriter knows this and is able to use this effectively to influence the target audience's mind or persuade them to purchase and consume a product. Now, on page 263 of the book, there's a heading, How to Write Effective Copy. Uh, there are a number of points here. I'm just going to talk about only a couple of them, which are highlighted in front of you. The first aspect of effective or good copy, which influences the consumer's mind or persuades the consumer, it has to be succinct. By this, we mean that it has to be brief or short, and it should rely on familiar words, words which are common, which are easy to understand. Now, here lies the challenge in terms of creativity. If a copywriter is going to use common or easy words, where will the originality or uniqueness come from? Remember ROI that I mentioned during week 6? So, this remains a challenge in terms of while you want to remain simple and uh, convey your message in such a manner that it is easy, the challenge is how to remain original in this process. So this is where the difference between a good copywriter and an average copywriter uh, comes out more prominently. Second aspect of an effective copy is uh, get personal. What it means is a copywriter has to write the copy in such a way that when the listener or the viewer who is watching this ad on his mobile phone or on his computer or on television or he's reading this ad in a newspaper or he is listening to this ad on radio, the consumer or the listener should feel as if someone is talking to him or her. So such kind of copy relies on the use of words like you rather than we or they. This is just an example to help you understand. Similarly, one more characteristic of effective copy is that it has to be conversation. That and this connects to what I said just a while ago, that the listener or the viewer, the target audience should feel as if someone is talking to them. So details regarding these three aspects are provided in the book, and you can review these later on. Moving to page 264 of this book and the chapter. One other aspect of effective copy is that the copywriter has to have very strong command over grammar and edase. Now, these are the two terms mentioned right in front of you. Uh, For example, every language, what is grammar? Very simply, it is a set of certain rules for any language. Uh, so, an effective copywriter has to have strong command over these set of rules. What to say, how to say it, how to structure a sentence, how to connect one word with the other, how not to use a certain word with another group of words. These are some of the aspects of uh, grammatical prowess or expertise. However, sometimes, with the intention of creating originality or being creative, and again, this connects to our week 6 discussion, and copywriters break or twist around or play around with these grammar or rules of grammar. So, for example, in the case of Apple Computer, their slogan, very famous slogan, "Think Different," is actually not uh, grammatically correct. The actual or correct one should be "Think Differently." But the copywriter deliberately went for twisting around or just tweaking the rules of grammar to uh, generate an original slogan which is different or unique. So you can play around with rules of grammar uh, to some extent, and the purpose is to get noticed, which is again one of the fundamental points behind the whole idea of creativity, which I talked about during my week 6 discussion. What is ADIZ? As I mentioned earlier, what is ADIZ? ADIZ is formulaic advertising copy. This is again mentioned on page 265 of the book. What is formulaic advertising copy? Formulaic means which is too generic. Um, for example, uh, whereby advertisers use very common sentences which we hear or listen to too often in our lives or during our daily routines. So, using such sentences is called formulaic writing of formulaic advertising. Typical, and this is called a tease, and it should be avoided because uh, this compromises the originality or the idea of creativity, and as a result, the ad loses or its impact or its ability to impact. Remember again the concept of ROI. So, for example, uh, uh, sentences which are very common. For example, if you are walking outside a market and you see on the shop terms like world's best computer. So this is formulaic in the sense that every second advertiser would be calling their product the best. So such formulaic writing has to be avoided to generate consumers' interest or create the possibility of impact. Moving further, uh, now starting from page 265 of the course book, uh, I'm going to be focusing on three dimensions of copywriting. The first one is how copy is created for print. Next, I will be talking about how copy is created for radio, and then I'll be talking about how copy is created for television as well as the digital medium. And the remaining part of this chapter focuses on these four dimensions: print, radio, television, and digital or online. Now, how copy is created for print? First of all, what is meant by print? As you might recall from our initial discussions during week 1, 2, and 3 of the course, print refers to anything on paper, anything on a material like Benaflex, anything in the form of a newspaper, a magazine, a billboard, a brochure, a pamphlet, a flyer, a poster, uh, and various other dimensions. So these are called print format or print media. So how is copy created for print? In this regard, two very important dimensions are important to understand. Usually, a print copy a copy for a print ad has two important components as shown in front of you. These are also called elements of copy, and these are two in number. First is display copy, as you can see here, which includes all elements that readers see in their initial scanning. So whenever you see an ad, and I'm going to show you some examples very quickly, whenever a reader sees or reads an ad, uh, besides the visual or the picture in the print ad, the very first words that catch the reader's attention because of the way they are written, uh, in bold font, large font size, etc., they are called display copy. The second aspect of the print copy, besides display copy, is the body copy, as you can see here uh, at the very bottom of page 265. This includes the elements that are designed to be read and absorbed, which means they are slightly more detailed. Now, please remember that when it comes to display copy, it further has different categories. For example, the different types of display copy include headlines, subheads, callouts, taglines, and slogans. For the sake of simplicity and to avoid any major confusion, I am going to be focusing only on headlines when I will be talking about display copy. And for body copy, I'm going to show you some examples. So let me now quickly jump to the PowerPoint presentation. Uh, I'm showing you this example to help you understand what I mean by display copy and body copy. So if you look at this ad, some of the text is, these are two examples. Some of the text on these two examples is more prominent or bold. For example, Al Habib monthly saver, 8%, and this sentence in Urdu, and the sentence in green, Rishta Bharose Ka. So all these are display copy because of the nature or the manner in which they are shown in front of you. As you watch this ad for the first time, you are likely to pay attention to 8% and monthly saver because these are the most prominent. So one can say that the copywriter and the designer of the ad, by the way, the designing of an ad is something we are going to cover in week 9, which is next week, and I will be discussing some aspects of design and production later. But as far as the copywriter is concerned, the monthly saver, the 8% especially, are the headlines or those aspects of the word or text which the copywriter wanted you to read first. Same is the case with the second example, monthly saver 8%, and then a statement written here, and Rishta Bharose Ka, which is another statement. Now, these are all display copies. What is the body copy? The text, the small font size, this one that I'm circling, or the text here in black, all this is body copy. This is supposed to be read if someone is going to be interested in the details of the product that a Bank Al Habib is offering. Otherwise, the main points in terms of monthly saver, 8%, Ji Haan, Har Mahine Munafa, the words Bank Al Habib, these are all display copy and these are supposed to catch your attention first. Similarly, in this example, this is an example of Surf Excel. These words are the headline, which are supposed to be noticeable. As far as the body copy is concerned, this ad does not have any body copy. It only has display copy with these two words, daag lagayenge. This is the headline, and these are subheads, as I mentioned, or taglines, etc., uh, which are also a certain type of display copy. In this example, the most prominent text in white, this is supposed to be display copy. The one in Urdu here and this part is all body copy. this one is display copy, etc., and this one is also body copy. So as you can see, the designer, taking help from the copywriter, has designed in such a way that they would like you to read certain text elements first and then gradually take you towards the body copy for more details about the product or what they want to say. In this example, this is an example of a Banza, a car, a brand. So it's not very visible on your screen, but this text that you see is all body copy. While this text here, celebrate the journey of life. This is the headline. Toyota, Avanza, all new. All these elements, these are all display copy. In this case, the term here is lowest markup, quickest processing time, owning the home just got easier. This is all display copy. Home mortgage, Park Libya is also display copy. This is body copy, as you can see here, the text in small font size. This is all display copy. Live life your way, Park Libya, display copy. While at the bottom, this is body copy. What is the headline? It is going to be the most prominent part or the boldest or the largest font size in an ad, which is in this case lowest markup. So these are some examples as far as print advertising is concerned to help you understand the difference between display and body copy. Okay, now let me take you back to the book and our review of the book, chapter 9. Some further aspects of headlines, because as I mentioned, headline is the most dominant or most prominent display copy. It is usually the largest font size or the most prominent text that you come across in any print advertisement. So on page 266, how to write headlines, it says that the headline is a key element in print pieces, and one very important aspect for you to remember is that an effective or impactful headline is the one which is in synchronization or which is supporting the visual or image. So very important that you understand that a good headline will always be uh, running parallel to or supporting the picture or visual if provided in an ad. So if there is coherence between the visual or picture and the headline, we say that such a headline is more effective or has the possibility or potential of creating impact. Also very important to remember, and this is a point mentioned on page 268, it says that if a headline and visual or picture support each other, the ad's ability to overcome the problem of clutter, and here you see this term, clutter busting, uh, it breaks through the comparative messages. Now, what does it mean? A well-written headline, which is supporting the visual or the visual supporting the headline, they have the ability to get noticed. Now, remember that when I mentioned or discussed ROI with you, and when I talked about impact, the I within the ROI, one very important challenge for the advertiser or the advertising agency is how to get noticed, how to grab your attention amongst thousands of images or visuals or content that you come across on a daily basis. An average consumer might visit a range of different websites, might be watching a range of different television programs. He might be accessing a number of different mobile phone apps during a daily routine. And he or she comes across a number of texts, messages, visuals, videos, graphics, movies, dramas, etc., short videos, YouTube content, digital content. So all this creates a very jumbled up world whereby it is very difficult for any advertiser to break through this onslaught of messages and get noticed. So this relates to the concept of clutter. So what is clutter? Clutter is a phenomenon related to advertising whereby when a consumer or a viewer or a target audience is unable to differentiate between or amongst various messages, uh, when he or she finds things very similar to each other, if he or she comes across a number of messages, ads, digital content, videos, short videos, television programs, social media content, and he's not able to remember things, we call this the problem of clutter. So, if as far as print ad is concerned, a good, well written, bold, noticeable headline coupled with a strong visual that will have the ability to bust or break the clutter. And if an ad has the ability to break the clutter, it will be it will become noticeable or will have the possibility of impact. That's what we mean. So clutter is a problem across all media, all channels, all components, whether it is print, whether it is radio, whether it is television. And especially clutter is a far bigger challenge when it comes to digital advertising, where you have access to millions and millions of pages, millions and millions of online pieces of content in different shapes and forms. So it really is a big challenge as to how to penetrate your mind and break this clutter using effective visuals and effective copywriting techniques. Moving further, there are two broader types of headlines. One is called the direct action headlines and the other is indirect action headlines. This is again provided on page 268. A direct action headline is pretty much straightforward and informative. An example is given here, keep your body strong. So for example, uh, headlines which are straightforward in the sense that when you read them, you understand them directly or easily. These are called direct action headlines. In the case of indirect action headlines, the copywriter deliberately introduces an element of uncertainty or uh, vagueness or some level of confusion in the headline. And the purpose is that by creating a headline which is slightly confusing or unclear, the copywriter wants to generate curiosity in the mind of the reader with the intention that he or the copywriter wants the reader or the consumer or the target audience to read further the ad in order to overcome the curiosity. So such headlines which are confusing or which have uh, limited clarity or which do not make themselves clear or perfectly clear to the reader, and the purpose behind this is to generate curiosity and push the reader to read the ad or remaining part of the ad. Such headlines are called indirect action headlines. There's a there are further categorizations of such headlines, the details of which are given in this book, but obviously we do not have time for that, so I'm going to skip that. One more kind of headline is, besides direct and indirect action headlines, is the blind headline. A blind headline is the one that when you read, it does not make any sense to you, completely impossible to understand. Um, and such headlines can be in the form of symbols, not even using words. So such headlines are written obviously with the intention to generate extreme levels of curiosity. But usually, research suggests that such headlines are a gamble in the sense that they can backfire because if they are completely impossible to comprehend or understand, maybe the consumer does not, he loses his interest to read any further. So, usually, with a blind headline, if an advertiser goes ahead with a blind headline through the copywriter's help, they have to make sure that the visual then has to be very powerful and very, very uh, eye-catching, or uh, it has to have the ability to grab the attention of the audience. Otherwise, the blind headline will not work. So on page 270, there's a discussion on how to write display copy, which I'm going to skip. One more aspect is how to write body copy. Again, please remember I'm talking about print advertising. So how to write body copy. Here, some important points are provided. For example, the body copy is the text of the ad, and its primary role is to maintain the interest of the reader. Usually, a body copy, as I showed you through some examples earlier, uh, these are details about the different aspects of the product. So, body copy is something that is not going to be read by every reader or every audience. Body copy is going to be read by a few of the target audience or readers. And this is going to be read usually by only those consumers or readers who uh, have an interest in the product or who want to learn or understand the product a little further. Only those will be the ones. So usually research suggests that uh, for every 100 uh, consumers who are reading a print ad, whether through newspaper or billboard or any other format, for every 100 of them, only 20 to 30% will actually move to the body copy. The rest of the 100, that is 70%, will usually stop at the display copy and the visual or picture, and will not read any further. So this is one of the key aspects of body copy, that it provides details about the product, its attributes or benefits, and usually it is read by not more than 20 to 30% of the target audience, as per research conducted on reading habits of different categories of consumers or target audience. Moving further, as we are discussing print advertising and copy for print, there are certain media requirements which have to be understood by the copywriter who is writing for a print ad. For example, if a copywriter is writing for a newspaper, an advertisement which will appear in a newspaper, he has to understand or she has to understand that newspaper is a very non-intrusive medium. By non-intrusive, we mean that usually a newspaper is read by a reader very casually and does not require a lot of attention. So, as a result, it is believed that if your message is complex, remember I mentioned it earlier, or if it is for a high involvement product, a newspaper might not be a very effective medium for printing your ad or showing your ad. Reason being that the reader is not very much attentive, or he or she is not paying much attention. So this point has to be kept in mind when writing a copy for an ad which is going to appear in a newspaper. Similarly, as far as magazines are concerned, please remember that print medium, as you all know, is on the decline. But still, in different parts of the world, uh, there is an audience of printed content. So we are referring to advertisement for that specific number or set of target audience who read printed content. So as far as magazines are concerned, very few are printed now and they're on a decline, as you all know. But magazines offer better quality ad production because of the usage of better quality paper for printing. So usually it is believed that if you are writing copy for an advertisement which is going to appear in a magazine, it is suggested that uh, it might be suitable for high fashion advertising or brands which are high fashion, or whereby the ad is going to be more colorful. So for such kind of brands which have a target audience amongst the uh, upper segment of the society or upper middle class, uh, such kind of brands which target these groups, for them, magazine might be a good platform because the print quality, due to the better quality of paper used, the print quality is better, and the copywriter has to accordingly choose words, keeping in mind the nature of the audience who reads magazines. As far as posters and outdoor advertising are concerned, for example, billboards, etc., please remember that when it comes to posters and other billboard-based advertising outdoors, the target audience has a very limited time to read. So it's a very poor strategy on the part of some advertisers that usually, besides the headline or display copy and the visual or picture, they also provide a lot of body copy. So if you come across any outdoor ad, a billboard ad, a poster ad, where besides the display copy, a lot of body copy text is given, this is not advised or not considered appropriate. The reason is that in outdoor scenarios, the reader has very limited time. Usually, you might be walking on the side of a road, you might be driving your car, or you will be exposed to the ad for hardly a few seconds. So you will not have time to read the body copy, and that is why it is suggested to avoid it. So a print ad, which is for outdoor purposes, has to rely on visuals and display copy only. No need for body copy. Moving further, uh, in the case of print ad, uh, one more aspect is writing for collateral materials. By collateral, we mean brochures, pamphlets, flyers, and other elements. So, for example, a copywriter might be required to develop a copy for a brochure or pamphlet or flyer. Now, please remember that a brochure or pamphlet or flyer, these are specific categories of advertising material within the category of print, and all these three are meant to target only those audiences or those target audience members or consumers or customers who would like to get details about a product. So for those customers who want to access detailed information, only for those brochures, pamphlets, or flyers can be written using copywriting practices. Moving further, now we shift to the second medium, which is radio. How is copy written for radio? Now, please remember that this discussion on radio advertising and printing, copywriting for print for radio is provided on page 275 of your course book. Generally, ads that are broadcast using the radio television platform are 15, 30, or 60 seconds in length. But this is not necessarily always the case. You might come across an ad which is more than a minute in duration, or you might come across an ad which is hardly 10 or 15 seconds in duration. So if you come across a very short ad on television or digital medium, online, or radio, which is for 10 or 15 seconds, usually we use the word spot for them. They are spot ads, which are designed to grab our attention very quickly over a very short period of time. Now, as far as radio is concerned, when it comes to copywriting, the copywriter has to keep in mind some key characteristics of radio as a medium. Understanding these characteristics of radio as a medium will help the copywriter develop a copy which is effective or impactful. For example, radio is considered a transitory medium. By transitory, we mean that this is a medium that we access, or some of us access, while we are on the move. Most of the people who listen to the radio in this day and age, and there are not many of us, but there is a target audience out there, usually they are doing something else or they are busy. For example, most of the listeners of radio are driving a car. If at home, rarely, it's not very common, but if someone is listening to a radio content, he or she is likely to be busy with household work or routine work as well. So that is why we call it a transitory medium. What does it mean? It means that the listener is not going to be fully attentive. So again, if you are writing a copy for a complex or high involvement product, radio is not a very effective medium, and it is usually a suitable medium for low involvement products or uh, messages which are kept very, very simple, because of the fact that the audience is transitory or moving, transitioning, and they are not really paying attention. Also, radio, second characteristic of radio that the copywriter has to keep in mind is that it is a theater of the mind. By theater of the mind, we mean that as we listen to radio content, we visualize in our mind who is saying it and how does the person look like in terms of uh, the statements that you come across. So if you, for example, if you're listening to uh, a talk show on the radio, if you're listening to a song using the audio medium only or the voice only, so you will create an image of that person in your mind in terms of how he or she looks, where he or she is sitting, uh, what kind of clothes he might be or she might be wearing, and stuff like that. So that is why we say that audiences imagine when they're listening to the radio content. Uh, and this is called theater of the mind because you create visuals in your mind when you come across. So copywriter has to keep these dimensions in mind. As far as radio copywriting is concerned, there are two important tools. Uh, there are certain tools which are important to remember. These are called the audio tools, and these are three in number, highlighted here on page 275. The first one is voice, second is music, and the third one is sound effects. These three tools are supposed to be in the arsenal of the copywriter when he or she is writing the copy for a radio ad. Voice refers to what the people are saying if you're listening to a radio ad. So these are all human interactions or sentences or words that are being said by the actors or the performers. Music, as you all know, I don't need to explain this. This can be something in the background to create dramatic effect or impact as far as the uh, voice is concerned. So music is supposed to be supportive in that sense. Sometimes music takes the lead. Sometimes it remains in the background while you hear the voices of the people saying something. And sound effects refers to uh, these bits of sounds that you come across. For example, the sound of thunder, the sound of a door closing, the sound of someone falling on the ground. If you connect this with how cartoons or animated movies are created, you will uh, understand better that sound effects play a very important role. Similarly, in the case of movies, directors rely on sound effects, music a lot in terms of creating uh, greater intensity within a certain scene. So, in the case of radio, it's very important to not just rely on voice, but also use music and sound effects effectively to create impact as far as the radio message is concerned. And the copywriter not only writes the dialogue or the sentences that the actors are going to say, but he or she is supposed to again also provide or guide the director in terms of where music will be put and what kind of sound effects will be used. So the details of this are provided on page 275 and 276. Anyone who is interested can read this further. Moving further, on page 277, let me show you uh, on your the right hand side of this page. This is an example of a copy for a radio ad. So you can have a look at it later on as to try and understand. So this is something that a copywriter has written for a radio ad. And again, please remember that something similar is going to be written for television ad or digital ad as well. So again, on the very right hand side, these are the sentences or the words being spoken by the actors. On the left hand side, you can see the names or titles of the roles or characters. At the very top is the here ad counsel refers to the advertising agency which has created this copy. US Department of Transportation, this is the client for whom this ad has been produced. This is the title of the ad campaign. Um, this is a certain code for the record of the advertising agency. Bookstore refers to the location. being demonstrated in this ad, the place where the conversation between the characters is taking place, and some other further information, date of production, final mix, expiration, etc. These are all details given. So this is just a sample to help you understand how an actual copy looks like when it is written by the copywriter. Also, there is an important concept mentioned on page 277, which is called image transfer. By image transfer, we mean that in many cases, in the case of radio advertising, the brand which has produced a television commercial or a digital commercial for online medium, they usually use the audio content from the television or digital ad for the radio ad also. So this is a very common practice to save costs on radio advertisement. And usually, if a target audience has seen the television ad for that brand, for example, uh, McDonald's. If you have seen an ad for McDonald's on Pakistani television channels, or if you have seen an ad for McDonald's on the social media or digital medium, and the company of McDonald's can very well choose to use the audio content of the same television or online ad for their radio ad also. So when you're listening to this, you can automatically transfer the image in your mind. That is, when you're listening to the voices or the sounds or the music or sound effects, you can imagine the visual component of the McDonald's ad as you have seen on television or digital media. Moving further, next we shift our attention to how to write television copy. Now, please remember that most of the points that I'm discussing here also connect with digital copywriting. So there is a lot of similarity between television copy and digital copy, and also there's a lot of similarity between digital copy and print copy, which I mentioned earlier. Now, one of the very important strengths of television as a medium is that it has the ability to uh, connect what is being said with visuals, moving images, people moving around, talking to each other, uh, objects moving. So this combination of visuals and text or words is what is the biggest strength of television, and this is also the strength of digital content that we come across. This combination of visuals and words. So a copywriter is much more empowered or stronger in terms of the possibility of impact, because whatever the words he or she writes, if they are provided or supported by adequate visuals, then the copy becomes far more effective and impactful. Okay, so moving further, what are the tools of television copywriting? Now, please remember, as far as the tools of radio were concerned, they were uh, audio based, that is, three: voice, music, and sound effects. When it comes to television and digital advertising, especially digital advertising, which is visual in nature, the tools are not just audio or sound based, but visual as well. So, for example, when it comes to visuals, you have moving graphics, you have pictures, you have video content to support the audio or the words or the copy. Uh, as far as the visuals are concerned, these are connected with some very important tools that the copywriter has. So the visual components relate to characters, costumes, sets and locations, props, lighting, optical and computerized special effects, and on-screen graphics. Now, please remember that during my week 9 session or lecture, I'm going to explain these in more detail to help you understand how, in the design and production phase of an ad, which is the step 3 of the ad creation process, these visual tools, for example, characters, costumes, sets and locations, props, what do they mean, lighting, etc., and how they're used. But so far in this during this part of the discussion on copywriting, just keep in mind that the copywriter has to understand that in his copy, he has to cover all these visual tools as well. So he's supposed to write about the characters. He's supposed to inform the director about costume, sets, location, etc. Obviously, the final decision is with the creative director, but the copywriter can facilitate in terms of the different visual components of an ad and how they will be shown on the screen for the television or digital ad. As far as the visuals are audio components are concerned, they remain the same. As you can see, music, voices, and sound effects. The only difference with regards to radio advertising is that in television, two concepts have to be kept in mind. One is the concept of voiceover, and the other is off camera. By voiceover, we mean that if you're watching a television or video-based ad or digital ad, which is visual or video-based in nature, if you see a background voice, or sorry, if you hear a background voice while something else is being shown on the screen, for example, uh, during an ad, if you are seeing a mountain or a village on the screen in front of you, and you are listening or hearing the voice of a person describing something, but that person is not visible in front of you, or you cannot see that person, this is called voiceover. Uh, and similarly, one other concept is off camera. Again, these are things which are supposed to be understood by the copywriter when he's writing the copy. So, what is off camera? Off camera means that, for example, when two actors are talking to each other, uh, and actor one uh, is being shown on the screen in front of you, and you see that this actor is not talking, rather, you are listening to the voice of actor two saying something to the first actor or actor number one, but that actor number two is not visually in front of you on the screen, even though you can hear his or her voice. This means that such voice is off camera. Uh, so, copywriter can use these techniques of off camera and voiceover to create dramatic effect. And obviously, the final decision, as I mentioned, regarding how to use voiceover, where to use voiceover, how to use off-camera technique, whether to use or not off-camera and voiceover. These ultimately reside with, or these decisions are finally taken by the creative director. So, moving further, how a television commercial or even a digital commercial is planned. Uh, please remember that because a TV or digital commercial, which is video based, involves not just audio but also video or visuals, so more planning is required, especially how will you manage costumes, how will you manage characters, how will you, you know, visually present the content. So it requires more careful planning on the part of the creative director, and the copywriter has to be aware of these technical dimensions. So usually TV and digital commercial, which is video based, these two are planned in the form of scenes and keyframe, as you can see here. Now, what is a scene? A scene is a collection of shots. What is a shot? A shot is a single camera focus on a particular object, a person, or a thing. So, for example, let's assume that we are watching an ad happening or showing a classroom environment. So, if you're watching a video where a classroom is being shown where a lecturer or teacher is giving a lecture and 20 students are sitting in the classroom. So uh, on, on the screen, if you are seeing for 3 seconds a visual which is showing only the teacher who is giving a lecture, this is called a single shot. Immediately after 3 seconds, the camera angle changes and you see 20 students in front of you on the screen, uh, and they are shown as if they are listening to the teacher. So this is the second shot. So after 5 seconds of showing the students, again we move back to the teacher, and for 5 seconds you only see the teacher uh, as if he's delivering a lecture. So this is the third shot. So these are various shots, and when you combine them together, these 20, 30, 40 shots or maybe more, this is called a scene. So each commercial is planned, or each advertisement is planned in terms of number and sequencing of the scenes. And the copywriter has to make sure that when he or she writes the copy, he writes the copy in terms of scenes. So scene one, scene two, for example, scene one is the classroom, scene two is the canteen, scene three is the bank, scene four is, um, for example, restaurant. So within the single ad, you might come across four different scenes. Scene one for the classroom, scene two for the uh, college canteen, scene three for the bank, and scene four for some other area, for example, a market or something. And inside each scene, there are multiple shots. So copywriter writes the copy using this breakup of the whole commercial or ad into a set of different scenes. Within these scenes and shots, at least one shot is supposed to be the nucleus or the central point of an ad or the most prominent point of an ad. For example, if there is an ad for a mobile phone, such as Infinix, and you see that Infinix has hired a celebrity, a famous Bollywood actor, uh, or any celebrity from Pakistan, for instance, uh, Humayun Sharif or Fawad Khan. So uh, within the scenes and the shots, there will be one shot, for example, where the celebrity is holding the mobile phone in his hand or smiling at the camera. So this single shot of the celebrity along with the product in his hand, this is called the key frame, which becomes the point of reference. That is, all the other scenes and shots are going to be revolving around this key frame. This key frame can be at the very start of an ad, it can be in the middle of the ad, or it can be at the very end of an ad as well. So this is something that the creative director has to decide in terms of where to place the key frame, how many scenes and how many shots to fill or record. Uh, Besides this, when we plan a television commercial, the creative director and the copywriter do not only focus on number of shots and scenes as well as the keyframe, but they're also supposed to develop the script. Script is the same as I mentioned to you earlier, the copy that I showed to you about that US department earlier. Let me show it to you again as an example. If I go back to this, these are some of the examples that I haven't shown you, but you can. I will be sharing this file with you through the Google Classroom. So, for example, uh, this is a print ad, but for television, if imagine that this is a visually recorded ad and there are visuals. So, uh, the copywriter has to write a script which contains the dialogues, which contains the characters, what each person is saying, etc., and that has to be shown uh, in the form of a document. It has to be provided to the creative director. So, and besides this, one important point, and I'm going to explain this especially when I'm talking about art and design and production next week, is the concept of storyboards and photo boards. So storyboards are also a key element of the planning for television or digital advertisement because they demonstrate how a story is going to be carried forward uh, uh, for that 1 minute or 45 seconds of it. So I will explain these photo boards or storyboards during week 9. For the time being, a storyboard simply defined as the visual plan or layout of a commercial It can be drawn by hand or on a computer, and I will show you some examples. A photo board, on the other hand, is photographic in nature. It is a collection of photos which sort of demonstrate the flow of a story. So just think of any comic book that you might have come across. So you see that a comic story is a collection of storyboards whereby you see the story flowing forward or moving forward through these blocks of pieces of information where you see those characters and they're talking to each other. So I will show you some examples during week 9 as well. Finally, as I mentioned, that when you are writing the copy for a television ad or visual ad, it is there are many similarities with the digital or internet-based ads as well as print ads. Just a couple of differences which are important to understand. Digital or internet-based advertising, because it is more interactive in nature, so the copywriter has to be aware of that, and that is why when you are talking about a web copywriting, the major challenge is to attract people to the site and to manage a dialogue-based communication as to how you allow for interaction. That is a major challenge of the copywriter. Besides this, some aspects of digital advertising are very simple, similar to print advertising. For example, banner ads, sidebar ads, and pop-ups. Although these are not very common now uh, because of their nuisance value or many internet users or digital device users not preferring those. So banner ads, sidebars are not very popular now, and very rarely we see them. Now there's greater focus on visual interactive content that is produced for digital ads as well. And the copywriter has to be aware that because of the greater interactive nature of the internet or digital medium, the copy has to be engaging and conversational as well. So, with that, I uh, come to the conclusion of this uh, talk or session. Uh, Some of the examples that I could not review, but these are connected with the print advertising. I will be sharing these PowerPoint slides with you through the Google Classroom, and you can just review them to help yourself understand the concepts of copywriting. So, in conclusion, uh, the main points with regards to copywriting are: copywriting is a process connected with development of the text and words for any ad. The person who is responsible for writing the copy is the copywriter. Uh, Copywriting is a very specialized skill, and it has four dimensions. One is the copywriting for print advertising, second is the copywriting for radio, third is for television, and fourth for internet. As I mentioned, and you have to keep this in mind, that for each of these four media, print, radio, television, and digital, the nature of copywriting has some differences in terms of the tools that are used, some of the various dimensions of these media. For example, how a newspaper is different from a magazine, and how a magazine is different from outdoor or billboard advertising. In terms of radio, this whole idea of theater of the mind, uh, and transitory medium, that has to be kept in mind when it comes to radio tools. These are audio in nature, including the three: voice, music, and sound effects. When it comes to television and digital media, the tools not only are audio but visual in nature. When it comes to visual tools, the copywriter has to understand the concept of characters, props, lighting, etc. These are some of the things, obviously, as I mentioned, I'm going to cover next week. So thank you very much for your time. Uh, I hope that you found this session fruitful. I will be staying in touch with you through the week 9 session. If you have any queries, you can raise these up in the Google Classroom, and we'll proceed accordingly with the remaining part of the semester. Allah Hafiz.